Welcome to The Explainer. You know that sinking feeling you get when you look at a back-to-school shopping list? Yeah, specifically the part where you're suddenly required to drop €600 on a highly specific tablet from literally one single school-approved supplier. Well, today we're taking that incredibly relatable, honestly visceral frustration and we're grounding it in economic theory. We're going to explore how a totally common administrative mandate basically crashes headfirst into the academic realities of a broken market. So let's pose the big question. Is it actually possible that when a school forces students to buy a specific device at a preset price from just one approved company, that we're looking at a textbook example of market failure? It's kind of a bold question, right? Because schools are supposed to be places of learning, not, arenas for corporate monopolies. But once we start picking apart the underlying economics behind these mandatory tech programs, the answers we find are honestly eye-opening. To figure that out, we're going to quickly run through 6 key areas. 1. Monopoly power and captive markets. 2. The asymmetric information gap. 3. Unintended negative externalities. 4. Government and institutional failure. 5. Missing markets for alternatives. And 6. Our final economic verdict. Let's get right into it. Think of this whole situation like a complete ecosystem of economic distortion. This isn't just some simple, well-intentioned school policy. No, it's a massive, tangled web of market forces. On one side, you've got restricted competition branching out, and on the other, all these hidden, unacknowledged societal costs. And it all stems directly from mandating that single, locked-down tablet. Every branch represents a fundamental breakdown in how a healthy, free market is actually supposed to operate. So let's unpack them. All right, starting with part 1. Monopoly power and captive markets. So when schools mandate a specific device from one specific vendor, they're effectively creating what economists call a captive market for families. And think about how jarring that actually is compared to our everyday lives. In a normal market, if a tablet costs too much, what do? You just walk down the street to a different store, or you pick a different brand, you vote with your wallet. But here, that freedom is completely stripped away. Families are just fenced in. It's literally like being locked inside a movie theater with only one concession stand. You just have to pay their exorbitant prices if you want the popcorn, because all cheaper alternatives from the outside world have been totally banned by administrative design. And because that chosen tech supplier faces absolutely zero competitive pressure within the school environment, well, there's no natural incentive for them to offer a discount or improve their customer service or, throw in a protective case for free. They've got guaranteed buyers. So the price families pay is pushed way higher than what economists call the socially efficient level, which is really just a fancy academic way of saying the fair price you normally pay on a healthy, competitive high street. That total lack of pressure, that is our first massive red flag of market failure. Moving right along to part 2, the asymmetric information gap. Now, in a perfectly healthy market, the buyer and the seller are on pretty equal footing, right? Like if you're buying a car, you can research the mileage, check the safety ratings, negotiate the price. But here, we slam right into this huge problem of asymmetric information. The scales are heavily tipped. The ed tech suppliers and the school IT admins hold all the cards, the technical knowledge, the pricing data, the exact system requirements, and that leaves the consumers, the parents who are actually footing the bill, just completely in the dark. Here's the reality. Because most parents aren't IT experts, they can't independently verify if a high-end, premium tablet model is genuinely objectively necessary for 7th grade math class. They don't know if the fixed bundle price is a good deal, and they certainly don't know if that perfectly good laptop already sitting on their kitchen table would work just as well for, say, opening a simple PDF. This huge information gap just nukes their negotiating power. It forces families into these suboptimal, expensive financial traps simply because they literally lack the data to push back. Which brings us to part 3, unintended negative externalities.
Now, a mandated device might have a very visible upfront price tag, say €600. But that number, it's basically an illusion. In economics, the sticker price rarely tells the whole story. That clean, simple number completely obscures a cascading strain that gets placed on individual households, the classroom environment, and even society at large.
Economists call these hidden burdens negative externalities. Basically, these are unintended consequences that aren't paid for at the actual checkout counter, but society ends up footing the bill anyway. So that's €600.
It ignores the severe budget strain on a working-class family who might actually have to skip meals or take on debt just to comply with a school rule. It ignores the educational cost of increased digital distraction because now students have direct, unfiltered access to games and social media right during lessons. And it entirely ignores the massive environmental cost. We are literally generating mountains of e-waste by forcing families to buy brand new devices when they probably have perfectly functional tech sitting at home.
All right, part 4, government and institutional failure. So, when an institution, like a school board or a government department, enforces rules that actively restrict competition and hike up costs for everyday families, they usually do it for their own administrative convenience. I mean, let's be real. It is simply easier for an IT department to manage one single type of iPad than 50 different brands of laptops. But by doing so to benefit themselves and a select group of suppliers, economists categorize this as government or institutional failure. It's a pretty profound realization. The school's policy itself is the source of the market inefficiency. It's not a protective measure for the consumer at all.
Now for part 5, missing markets for alternatives. A lot of schools strictly block bring your own device or BYOD policies. And by doing this, administrators aren't just showing a polite preference for one particular vendor. They are actively outlawing the use of cheaper, secondhand, or already owned alternatives. The secondary market for devices inside that school environment goes from being vibrantly competitive to completely non-existent, virtually overnight. So it's not a market that died naturally because of a lack of consumer demand. Nope, it's a market killed entirely by red tape and institutional rules.
And finally, part 6, the final economic verdict. Zooming out to look at the whole picture again, the cascading effects are undeniable. A compulsory device scheme locks in a strict monopoly. It thrives on keeping parents totally uninformed and without any leverage. It ignores massive environmental and financial externalities. And it uses institutional power to just decimate alternative, more affordable markets. It is a perfect storm of distorted economic incentives, and it completely shifts the burden of cost away from the institution and squarely onto the shoulders of everyday families. Ultimately, a compulsory scheme restricts competition, limits consumer choice, and leads to a wildly inefficient allocation of resources. This confirms that, economically speaking, this totally everyday school policy is a textbook case of partial market failure. The academic theory completely, unequivocally validates that real-world frustration families feel when they're staring down that back-to-school shopping list. So we're going to leave you with this final thought. When institutions mandate purchases and override the free market just for their own administrative convenience, who truly pays the hidden price of that restricted choice? It's a question that goes way beyond just laptops in a classroom. It really bleeds into how we view consumer rights across all areas of our lives. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and keep questioning the economics of the world around you.